Chambers. It's beautiful September 24th. I was delighted to see the no parking signs up in my subdivision, which means my snow is getting cleared this week. So yay for Stony Plain. So it is finally my turn. I had to wait a long time for this. Members of council, there's a gentleman before you. If I could have a motion, please. And Deputy Mayor's not here, so we'll go Councillor Matties, please.
The Town Council adopt the February 24th, 2020 regular council meeting agenda as presented.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Administration, anything to add? Okay, with that, I'll call the question. All in favor? And that is carried. And moving on to a public input session. This is the time that we allow residents to talk to council for about 5 minutes on anything that's not on the agenda. And today we have Mr. Hans J. Hahn in the audience. Welcome, sir.
Good evening.
Good evening. So again, just sign in on the sign-in sheet, and then once you get that, you have 5 minutes, sir.
Okay, thanks.
Welcome. Have a seat.
At first, I want to make the following point. We have it now 4 minutes after 6, and my first point, which may be controversial, should be exempted because the point is caused by a town employee. I had this once in the past that Leanne Carpenter, I know that you have to register here for such a presentation the week before on Friday, and it happened 2-3 years ago. I didn't make a note of this, that I phoned on Friday early in the afternoon, and this time it was similar a couple of years ago. And she is not in, but it comes a voicemail up. I'm in on Friday, please phone back late, etc., etc. So I phoned her at 2:09 and got this message. And since I don't expect city or town employees to lie, then I tried again at 2:20, and then again the same message. Then I tried again at 2:47, again the same message, and you can see it in the paper that I submitted. I had to phone on Friday 7 times and couldn't get hold of her. So this is, in my opinion, unusual. And when it happened before, 2 or 3 years ago, maybe not this long, I must have been here at this place 5, 6, 7 times over the years. I'm living in Stony Plain. Then she threatened me. If it would make something out of it, then she wouldn't let me talk again, or something like this. I didn't make a note of this, but at least she threatened me. And this is, for me, unacceptable. And in my experience, I'm over 82 years old and came here 42 years ago to Canada. And I don't like split loyalty. So I came here on the 4th of April, 1978. On the 1st of August, 1981, I was Canadian citizen. So this is basically nearly the shortest time. I brought enough money along to buy right away a house. I started on my own, and I lost in 82, 83 through Alberta government, in total close to $500,000. I shut my company down and declared personal bankruptcy. and the Treasury branch who shut me down later more or less regretted this, and they applied with my other creditors that I didn't cheat anybody but gave all my private stuff in, and on average my guys got 90 to 95 cents on the dollar, but my wife and I, we were in shits, so to speak, and I sued the government, and I sued them for 12 years, and I got an award with quadruple cost, which is quite unusually in civil court, but I spent 370,000 over the years and collected back 275. So in plain English, the way I see the legal system here is in civil matters really shits. And I'm fighting on this time. Right now I have 2 lawsuits going on, one against the county. There's for 3 years, they shut me down on rebuilding our cottage. And the councillor from the town lied. It went to Alberta Court of Appeal. The judge lied. I applied to Judicial Council in Ottawa. They should fire her, and actually an Alberta Court of Appeal justice who lies in her own court belongs to jail. But this is only to tell you that I'm in very plain English, I'm quite often pissed off the way things develop here. And the dispute with the government, which took on for 12 years, was for $174,000. And the government pissed away in good English, in good construction English, $1 million. So that's background. The large item pickup, I saw there that you want to save 45,000. There was a presentation made by operations manager Gary Webster and Greg Zirk. And first question, why do I have 2 people come here? In the past, I've prevented once here at the same place that the council gives all manager. At first, you gave them 1 week on vacation, and this I overread and didn't notice. But then when the second week of vacation time extra was negotiated, I came here and I succeeded to prevent this. But then there were 2 guys there that, in my opinion, having been a contractor for quite a few years, 25 or 26 years, this is baloney. And then the $45,000, which are mentioned there, I have my doubts if this will stay this way. And then if the town wants to save something, then maybe the alternative of getting smaller garbage cans. We are living now 10 years here, and our garbage can is slowly breaking away, and ours is normal size, is normally only a third full, and so one of the neighbors, we have allowed them to bring their garbage because they have always some bags, and half of the garage sometimes full, so my wife told them, you can come to our place, we have only third or half. So, but in Germany, we had already smaller cans in the 70s. And then I left Germany in 78. For sure, we got each week the garbage collected, but you had smaller one. And you don't have to make it half at the cost, but for sure, if you look around, there are many people who will not use the full. So get the smaller one. Ours is basically at the end of its lifespan, so we need a new one. So if we go to the town, will we be charged? How much is it? And isn't there a possibility to save some money? So this is to this point. And the extra vacation, And there's one point which is not addressed in this large item pickup is environmental impact. The stuff which is taken away from the people, it helps poorer people, and there's lots of stuff which is still usable, and this is recycling per se. It's really recycling. And then to say, okay, we need more guys and maybe overtime and you name it. So there's so many variables in that I feel this should be reconsidered. Then on the utility bill, which we got on the 9th of January, and there's projected what it will be this week, and this sheet shows, I calculated this, and I phoned today the accounting department, and they and I agree within a range of a couple dollars, $2 or $3, what it is, except for one thing. In this statement is for storm water residential single family per month, there's a hyphen in the column. And that means somebody could say that doesn't cost anything right now, which is obviously baloney. It's incorporated in the taxes, but it's not amount there. So the whole thing can be manipulated 10, 20, 30 dollars per annum up and down, and nobody can check this. And this is not to my standards. And I talked today with the accounting department, and I talked with two people, Lady Elizabeth and Riley, and both were very helpful and cooperative. And we came to see what I get the same numbers with them, except for this item, and this is not included. So it's useless. It's useless. And then you push to have electronic billing, and all this baloney is it's disgusting. So now I come to my last point.
So thank you. I've given you 12 minutes already, Mr. Hahn, and we reserve the right for 5 minutes for every presentation, and you've been 12 minutes. So we've been very, very lenient with you. If you'd like to discuss this further, we can set up a meeting and we can go through everything.
I agree. My time run out.
But for sure, do you want?
But let's say one thing. There are too many things taken over by the municipalities which shouldn't be. And everywhere and everything is bullshit, bullshit, bullshit. The COA thing is, I have here, you can buy this for plus minus $20, is the pocket world figures, and there are numbers and I read you on H85, biggest emitters of carbon dioxide. In the year 2015, China had 10 trillion, and Canada has, where is it? Pretty much down,
Yes.
but still before Germany.
Yes, and that's why the
Canada
Alberta government is looking for a fair deal.
600 so. And the Greta Thunberg and all this stuff which you read is bullshit of the highest order. And this uneducated, unknown facts, it's extended to people in Switzerland. There is a Nobel Prize winner 3 years ago. He got a Nobel Prize in chemistry, and he walks with this Greta Thunberg. That's bullshit in the highest order, and you can't trust anybody anymore.
Yes. Thank you. Definitely appreciate it.
But you should buy, or everybody should buy such a thing, and then you can read what it means. What is in 2 years? What is this? And you can have an idea what the media report is. 99% fake news.
Thank you. Yes, and
I thank you for listening.
Thank you. And you know what? If you like to, I'd like to set up a time for have coffee with you to have over a little bit longer time and we can chat over this.
Yeah, I thank you for allowing this.
Okay. Thank you, sir. I appreciate sharing your passion and what you think.
What was the name of the book, Hans? What was the name of the book? What is the name of the book?
It's Pocket World Figures from the Economist.
World Figures.
Costs around $20, and most of the time I have all couple of years I buy a new one, and then you can compare. And actually, anybody who is in economy, in business, or in your position, have at least 3 or 4 on the shelf, that you know what the truth is.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I will let Mr. Hans go over time. So anybody else in the council chambers would like to speak to council on anything that's not on the current agenda? Okay, seeing none, we have some extra people in our gallery today, and I believe they're here for a special occasion. Councillor Matthews, would you like to introduce them, please?
Absolutely. So my mom, Phyllis Foshheim, my husband, Joe Matties, my son, Reagan Matties, my son at the back, Ryan Matties. My daughter is Lara Matties, and her partner is Cam.
Okay. Welcome to council chambers. Thank you. And see nobody else in for public input, so we'll move on to presentations and delegations. We have 2 presentations today. The first one is the appointment of the deputy mayor. First, I'd like to thank Deputy Mayor Plechko. He's not here. He's enjoying the vacation because I worked him so hard that he needed the time away, and he wasn't even here for his last meeting. So definitely thank Councillor Plechko for his work, and Councillor Matties. I'll be looking for you to step up. I'll be sending you on things and that I can attend, and hopefully your calendar is still free. Okay. And I would need a motion for that, so Councillor Lloyd, please.
Yes, I worship that we appoint Councillor Linda Matties as Deputy Chief Elected Official for the term of February 24th, 2020 to June 30th, 2020, or until the appointment of the next Deputy Chief Elected Official.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Loy. Any comments or debate on that? And we cannot vote down that. Okay, with that, call the question all in favor. Okay, that is carried, and now we'll do the official. Councillor Matties, if you can join me. I, Councillor Linda Matties.
I, Councillor Linda Matties,
Swear that I will diligently,
swear that I will diligently,
faithfully, and to the best of my ability,
faithfully, and to the best of my ability,
execute according to the law
execute according to the law
the office of Deputy Mayor for the town of Stony and the province of Alberta.
the office of Deputy Mayor, Town of Stony Plain, for the province of Alberta.
So,
So help me God.
So as the chair, I'm going to take 2 minutes, and I'm going to ask Councillor Matties to have a picture of their family since they're all here today. And we'll just move out of the way so that you can take this time with them. We're just stand out of the way so that you can have a picture.
Okay, do you guys want to come up and get a picture taken?
Do you want to?
Why don't we, can we have everybody?
No, here, let me get a picture first with
Okay.
just you and your
My
family.
husband's got my camera.
And then-
Okay, okay.
They were here for the first time. Let's see the looks of it. Yeah. This is for. Right, everybody looking here? And this is Mama's phone, so if it doesn't work, because it's an iPhone.
Okay, now look here.
One more. Great. Thank you. Well, that'll be it first. Thank you for thinking of that.
Congratulations, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. Troy.
Okay, moving on to our next presentation is the Stony Plain Kinsmen. They're supposed to be here to do a little bit presentation about their 100th anniversary as Ken Canada and the 40th anniversary as the Kinsmen Club of Stony Plain. On Tuesday last week, we raised the flag to celebrate the 100th anniversary, and it looks like they must be busy tonight and they're not here. But if they do come anytime, we'll just take a break and we'll just return to the agenda and take care of that presentation. Okay, moving on, there's no statutory public hearings. There is council agenda, so adoption of the minutes, RCM of February 10th. Councilor Lowry, please.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. I move the council approve the town council meeting minutes as presented.
Okay, members of council, have you had a chance to look through the minutes? Any errors or omissions that need to be corrected? Okay, I didn't see any in there, so I'll call the question. All in favor? And that is carried. Okay, moving on to commissions, boards, and council committees, etc. And we have one tonight. That's the TLC. And Councillor Meyer, please.
Yes, thank you. The town council received the council boards and committee meeting minutes for information.
Okay. Members of council, you had a chance to read the minutes. Any questions for our council appointee rep and or administrative staff?
Yes, I did have.
Okay, go ahead, Deputy Mayor.
Yes, one question. With regards to the presentation regarding the recreation facility, I was just wondering if there was any comments, feedback, or suggestions that arose from the presentation?
Town manager or general manager?
Your Worship, through the Deputy Mayor Matties. There weren't a lot of questions about the facility. They just, it's really echoey. They basically were grateful that we came and provided them the information, and anything moving forward, they'd like to be kept in good communication between the two of us with respect to the potential impacts on the TLC and a potential new facility in the region. So really, it was just an information providing session. Very grateful. Some general questions about have we considered the impact of a potential facility on the TLC as a whole, and have we looked at any detailed costing and those types of things from an operational perspective. So we just shared where we were currently in the process and that work was still being undertaken.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, Your Worship, too. I think the other thing I would add just a little bit further to that was that we both, or we, the town, so to speak, made the commitment to ensure that we are working with them and reporting to them and keeping them in the loop. And that was a commitment we made that night, which I think was well received.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions regarding those minutes? Okay, seeing none, I have a question to the board member regarding item 5.4, which is the outdoor pool update. Can you share the commentary from the general manager and to see if it's continued to go on as a partnership for next year?
Yep. The Tri-Leisure is very confident, very comfortable with the operations of the outdoor pool. It's been a successful venture for them. The ability to retain staff throughout the year has been beneficial to them as well. So they are quite happy with how things are going and looking forward to continuing that relationship with the town.
Okay, thank you. And then question to administration. Have we received any negative feedback from our residents that are using the outdoor pool?
Your Worship, related to the operation of the pool from the TLC, nothing that we wouldn't have received if we were operating it ourselves. So common things that people raise concerns about from time to time, but not based on the operation for sure.
Thank you. Okay, any other questions? Okay, see none, I'll call the question. All in favor? And that is carried. Moving on to bylaws. We don't have any bylaws to deal with tonight. Moving on to business items. And the first one is the RTSC. Go ahead, administration.
Thank you, Your Worship and Council. We are here today with a recommendation to support the formation of the Regional Transit Service Commission. As the town manager and others will attest, this is the culmination of many years of studies and discussions on transit integration in the region. The RTSC recommendation follows the extensive work in the past year by administration and the working group to guide the report that is before council today. The consultant Ernst & Young has been in front of council numerous times in the past few months with the goal of informing council of the project as it developed. We are very excited with the progress and the opportunity that the RTSC will provide our community. The decision tonight is the first of a few gates where the town will have the opportunity to decide on the support for this regional system. It is known that further details and dialogue will take place between each gate. If council supports this motion, then administration will continue to engage with the other municipalities who support the RTSC on the next steps and implications moving forward. I'll now pass it over to Mr. Dibble, who has been a member of the working group on this project and worked extensively on the project for the past few months.
Thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just to add a little bit here, EY's report, Accelerating Transit in the Edmonton Metropolitan Region, Building a Regional Transit Service Commission. It's an overarching strategy, governance, and operating model, conceptual regional transit study, financials, business case, and implementation plan for a regional transit system, comprised of 13 different municipalities. On the side here, you'll see that I've highlighted 6 different aspects or implications of us joining the Regional Transit Service Commission if council so desires and votes to proceed. The 6 items are regional participation. Again, this moves us from the potential to just have 3 municipalities within our system to potentially up to 13. The cost effectiveness, again, this is with more partners and resources, more opportunity for economies of scale to apply and allow for a better value service. In terms of infrastructure needs, park and ride infrastructure needs assessment would be required if we do join. It is a collaborative decision-making process, which does mean less direct control of the transit service, but as decisions would be made through the commission itself. Improved service levels and standards. Again, the commuter route would begin in Stony Plain as opposed to right now where we would need some sort of linkage to get to Spruce Grove and utilize theirs. And again, the operation itself would be for a greater duration and time. And 6th, the revised transit service costs. And again, this gives us a little bit of flexibility, but if we do want to include the local service as we've got planned, it might be at a slightly higher cost, but again, higher improvements, direct service, and so forth. As presented last time this came before council, I'm showing here the 3 different options. Again, option 1 is the existing service that we're working on for September. Tri-regional service with Spruce Grove and Parkland County. Option 2 is a regional and local service provided by the RTSC. And the 3rd option is regional service only provided by the RTSC. Council has any additional questions? I'm here. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Members of council, any questions of clarity? Okay, see none. Councillor Lloyd, please, with the motion.
Does the motion kind of come up?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Your Worship. The Town Council direct the Chief Administrative Officer to provide notice in writing to the Deputy Ministers of Transportation and Municipal Affairs for the province of Alberta that the Town of Stony Plain supports enactment of a regulation under the Municipal Government Act creating a Regional Transit Services Commission for the Edmonton Metropolitan Region, including Stony Plain, as a commission member, providing that the governance, financial, and operating models for the commission are consistent with the recommendations in the Ernst & Young report entitled Accelerating Transit in the Edmonton Metropolitan Region, Building a Regional Transit Services Commission.
Thank you very much. Members of council, I'll open up the floor for questions, debate, and commentary. Go ahead, Councillor. Deputy, go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. I have a clarifying question. You spoke about gates that we would have the opportunity to maybe consider opting out of this commission. Can you just give us a little bit more information about how you see that moving forward, or how that's planned moving forward?
Your Worship, through you to Deputy Mayor Matties. So the what is known right now is all the municipalities are voting whether they're supporting this motion or not. The motion is the same for all the municipalities, all 13. And so after the votes take place, then there will be a meeting of the working group and the transition team to understand who is in and who is not in or not interested in participating at this time. And then what further analysis might be necessary or might have already taken place to determine the financial impact or the viability of the system with the remaining members. So I guess that is planned to basically happen in March, April. And after that point, the establishment of a further process and further dialogue, and with potentially more gates or more opting in or out decisions to come later based on more information.
Thank you.
Councillor Loy, go ahead.
Yes, Your Worship, and I refer to page 30 of 107. And it says, based on the conceptual level cost estimates, the RTSC service would be about 50,000 more than the proposed integrated tri-regional service for the Spruce Grove and Parkland County. Can we get a bit more clarification? I've always been a little concerned with the dollar figure that's really been consistent from day one. And now on their vote day here, Mr. Mayor, I see $50,000 added on. I'd just like a little clarity on that, please.
Okay, go ahead, Patricia.
Through your worship to Councillor Loy, this here stems from changes. Again, we reduced the amount of local service costs in December when the budget was approved. At that point in time, the Regional Transit Commission was working with higher numbers, given that difference, which has led to the change of about $50,000.
Okay. So Councillor Lloyd, do you remember what happened at corporate plan?
You're going to refresh my memory.
Yes, I think we made a motion in council to reduce the level of money that we were providing for the regional transit to the city of Spruce Grove. We
Yes.
dropped that down. So that's why there's a difference.
That's okay. So that's the clarity that I wanted on record, where this additional 50, because to me, this is a monumental step that this municipality is going to make a jump, I believe is going to make a jump to. But I always have in the back of my mind that I don't want to see these costs creeping up slowly but surely to an untenable position and one of regret for either this council or councils down the road. That's my concern. Yeah. And as I say, for the record.
Okay, good comments, Councillor Loy. Anything else, members of council? Councillor Matties, go ahead, Deputy Mayor.
Your Worship, I just have one comment. I am very much in support of the regional transit system. I think that it would be a very, very good overall way where we can ensure that our economic situation is strengthened as we're able to get people to jobs and move people throughout our communities. And with regards to what's happening, we've had options that we see for different effects of our tax increase in 2022. But in the meantime, we will be using some local service here, and that's going to allow us to just learn and evolve as that process continues. So I 100% support this motion tonight to basically move on with considering the Regional Transit Service Commission for our region and for Stony Plain.
Okay. Thank you. Anything else? Do you want to speak or do you want me to speak? You can go first. Okay. Members of Council, I think this is a good step forward for our community as we continue to grow and evolve as a town, from a village to a town, maybe to a city eventually. We need to provide services for residents. We're no longer the same community that we were, 5,000 residents strong. We're close to 18 and a half, so 18,000, so we almost tripled in the last 20 years. So the services that are required by our residents have expanded. And this is an opportunity for us to get into the transit game without footing the entire bill ourselves. If we're doing this ourselves, I don't think I can support it because of the tax base that we have and the amount of money it costs to do transit. But when we do it as a region, where we pool our resources, we can find efficiencies, we can find cost savings, and we can provide a service that we don't have at a nominal fee. Looking at the way that this RTS is structured, it does not kick in until 2022, which in that time, as Deputy Mayor Matties has said, we'll be operating our own transit in September of 2020. It'll give us a little over a year to figure out what our residents need, what they require. Because sometimes what they need and what they require are two different things. To give us that year and a half to look through that will give us some security of what we're getting for our money. Also, based on all three options, in 2020, we can choose not to do our local services if the commuter services meets the needs of our residents, which then again saves us tax dollars so we don't have to increase taxes to provide the service. If it's done well and efficiently, we can transition from our own tri-regional transit with Spruce Grove and Park County to the Regional Transit Commission at a very, very nominal fee. And I'm looking forward to all the numbers coming back. And I'm also looking forward to see the other municipalities, to see if they see the vision of working together to building a stronger region or trying to go by themselves. I personally know that from what I've seen in our communities, we cannot achieve as much, can't go as far, we cannot provide the services if we try to do everything by ourselves. So I will be supporting the motion to go forward. And usually I close and then ask the mover if they want to close, but I'm saving this for Councillor Laurie, as he was the representative for the town of Stony Plain on the Regional Transit Commission as we, over the last 2 years to get to this point. So Councillor Laurie, I'll give you the floor.
Thank you, Your Worship. I truly appreciate it. I'd like to start by thanking Council for their trust and their confidence in myself as the Council-appointed representative on the RTSC transition team, and specifically Deputy Mayor Matties for being my alternate. Thank you very much. Since the signing of the MOU back in October of 2018, the sheer magnitude of work that has been completed to date is impressive, and our administration also deserves commendation for the role that they have played in this. I am proud to say that I am fully supportive of this motion to confirm our ongoing commitment to becoming one of the founding members of the Regional Transit Services Commission for the Edmonton Metropolitan Region. Transit is such an important piece of a successful and connected region, and this was confirmed by our council with the implementation of transit services included in our 2020 corporate plan with delivery to begin this fall. The next step into a regional service delivery model is a responsible, logical, and beneficial decision that will allow us to quickly accelerate to a much more efficient and desirable service than we could accomplish on our own or sub-regionally. The benefits to the town and our residents span a spectrum from social to economic to environmental and beyond. Recently, the City of Edmonton and the City of St. Albert have both confirmed their commitment to the RTSC, and a majority of the remaining municipalities will be doing so this evening and in the coming days. You also may have heard that Strathcona County has voted not in favor of joining the RTSC, and while disappointing, this certainly does not mean that the RTSC cannot move forward. It is our responsibility to understand that this decision tonight is about what is best for Stony Plain based on the report we received from EY, Accelerating Transit in the Metropolitan Region, Building a Regional Transit Service Commission. And our decision should be based off that report and our belief of whether or not this model is a good idea for our municipality and the region as a whole. This is one of many benchmarks along this process, some that we have already completed and others that will follow, including an evaluation of the impacts of the decisions by all 13 municipalities that were around the RTSC table. This decision takes courage, trust, confidence, and the belief that although there are certainly unknowns, the premise of the model presented is the right model to move our town and the entire region forward. I would like to quote some information that was shared at the Spruce Grove Committee of the Whole meeting on February 18th. A number of Canadian and US municipalities have formed transit commissions over the past 100 years. Once established, their benefits appear to be significant, and not one that we are aware of has been disbanded. The Toronto Transit Commission, which is 100 years old in 2020, is among the oldest and is one of Canada's largest. This simply shows that the regional model for transit works. Simply put, I believe this is the right step for Stony Plain and for the entire Edmonton metropolitan region. And in closing, I would like to ask for Council's courageous support in trusting that together with our regional partners, we can create a prosperous and successful transit commission for the greater good of all of our regional residents. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you. And with that, I call the question. All in favor? Okay, and that is carried. Thank you. Moving on to 9.2 is the Town of Stony Plain naming policy. Go ahead, administration.
Thank you, Your Worship and Council. I am pleased to present the naming policy for Council's consideration tonight. The policy replaces the subdivision, street, and building naming policy that was approved in 2003 and the amenity policy that was approved in 2017. The purpose of the naming policy is to establish a coordinated and consistent naming process and framework for the town, to enable proper public input and vetting, to ensure decisions are transparent and in keeping with policy, to establish clear roles for administration and council, to improve the time required and staff resource efficiency to process naming items. Included in the policy are definitions, standards, and criteria. The policy also introduces the concept of a significant names registry. The intention of the registry is to provide transparent process for this community to submit name request applications for significant items for council approval. The draft of the policy was presented to council at the Governance and Priorities meeting on February 3rd. The latest version has been revised based on comments submitted by council. The revisions are shown in red. In particular, the definitions of municipal buildings and recreation facilities have been revised to provide, we hope, more clarity. Administration's recommendation is that council approve the naming policy and repeal both the subdivision name and street and building naming policy and amenity naming policy. I'm available to answer questions at this time.
Okay. Thank you, General Manager. Deputy Mayor, for the motion, please.
Approve the naming policy C-PI-043. Number 2, repeal subdivision, street, and building naming policy 342/10/03/SP, and 3, repeal amenity naming policy C-PI-012.
Okay. Thank you, Deputy Mayor. So again, administration, thank you for providing the red changes from when you first brought it. It was a little easier to track. Members of council, anything to add and comment and provide feedback regarding the suggested naming policy? Councilor Laurie?
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to administration. In respect to the significant names registry, we're looking at changing the policy tonight and repealing the other policies that are in place. But as I understand it, we have no proposed names for the significant names registry. I'm wondering if we have some type of a process that would allow us to quickly accelerate that registry's inception, so that as soon as something does come forward, we have names in the bank, for lack of better terms. I was hoping that we might see a proposal of a few names to start that registry. So if administration can shed some light on how they see that unfolding, so that if we have a request for a name that's required from there, we actually have some names on the registry, that would be fantastic.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to Councilor Laurie. That is an excellent suggestion. Yes, you are correct. There is no list as it currently exists, so we would welcome feedback and maybe some informal discussion on some of the potential names that we might put together, historical and noteworthy and otherwise, that we could put together and bring back to council for ratification or approval as per the policy.
Thank you, Your Worship. Can I follow up?
Go ahead.
Thank you. Through you. Might I suggest that we utilize our communications department for a public call-out and accept suggestions from the public that can then be brought forward to council to kick off the change in our naming policy and the significant names registry. I think simply putting this out through our communication channels would allow our residents to help kickstart this and also make them aware of some of the changes that have occurred and help them understand that we're looking to continue to connect to our history and to our public and recognize them as we move forward with our naming.
That's a good comment. Yep. Thank you.
Your Worship, the administration will discuss that internally and try to determine the best way to transact that. Yep.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments? Okay, Deputy Mayor, go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just a comment back to Councillor Laurie. Just if you kind of give me some guidance as to how you would think that would fold out in terms of just maybe putting some parameters in place for individuals. Do you have something in mind as to how the community would provide? Like, it's pretty broad, right, in terms of what we're referring to.
Yes.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Right in the policy under 7.0, it has the significant names registry criteria. Right. So I would suggest that we would put a public call out for names that would meet the items 7.1 through 7.5.
Okay. 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 I have a question. With regards to, first of all, this policy, I think it provides an excellent example of a framework that does provide clear guidance and direction for those who are entrusted to do the work. So I think it's excellent. I have a question, though, with regards to the municipal buildings. It's on page 43 of 107. And, sorry, just bear with me.
5.5.
5.5. And it says municipal buildings should be named to include the facilities function, i.e. town office, and then it writes Heritage Park, Stony Plain Golf Course, Glen Hall, Centennial Arena, which gives us some examples. My question for you, though, when we were looking at function, and this came from a conversation I had with the executive director of the Pioneer Museum, who spoke to me about how sometimes people mistake Heritage Park for the Pioneer Museum. They stop there first before going to the Pioneer Museum because there's not a sign on the building, for example, that says what it is. So I would like to have clarity when we're looking at this protocol that we have, that naming our municipal buildings should be named to include a facilities function. When I asked our mayor what Heritage Park was or what he felt it was, and he thought it was an event center, and I felt that described what it was. So would that be then, for example, Heritage Park Event Center as a possible example, so that we could make sure that individuals are aware of what we're referring to when we're referring to that building? And then secondly, will there be a sign at some point of time on that building?
Your Worship. Your Worship, through you to Deputy Mayor Matty. So I understand that the Heritage Pavilion, what do I call it? Heritage Park building currently does not have an official name. So administration would be pursuing naming that building based on the policy in front of you, which would mean we'd have to bring options back to council for your approval. So event center may be one of the possible names in the future. I guess after that point, a sign could be put on it. I'd have to defer to my colleague on in the facilities branch on signage, but again, that's a budget item, so I guess we take that into consideration based on whatever council decides its name to be.
Thank you.
Your Worship, too, if I may just comment, going back to name registries, the other outreach we can do, the significant name registry, refers to pioneers and early settlers and so on and so forth. And as council's well aware, we've got some historical groups in town, and we can reach out to them as well just by letter and saying, hey, this is here if you have any ideas or what have you. And I'm sure they do, and I'm sure they will submit some. The other thing, too, that I would add, we had something similar to this in the community I used to work in, and the names do get generated over time by sometimes family members, general public, so on and so forth. And, it is a system that generally works pretty well. They're all listed, and you're able to make some choices from there. So, again, I wasn't here the first time this was tabled in the council chambers, but do have a bit of experience in the former community. And I just wanted to add to that. We'll do some of that outreach just to some of our, I don't know if you call them like stakeholder groups, but significant people, past mayors, past council members, all that sort of stuff. We'll do a little bit of our own addition to the registry as well if need be. So,
Okay, thank you. Any other questions, comments? Okay. See none, I'll be supporting the motion in hand. It is also gives us the ability to name subdivisions, streets, and buildings, and it repeals some of the outdated policy that we have, so it does make it a little more updated, and also gives us the ability to direct developers and potential landowners and developers to a site where they can actually look and to see if their names that they're suggesting or they want for their developments works. So it's kind of very, very easy to look at there. So looking forward to seeing how this unfolds and how it works as we go forward in the new year and the years to come. Okay, with that, administration, I call anything else? Okay. And then regarding the advertising, I think Councilor Laurie had a good good comment about trying to engage as much people as we can to maybe generate a few names onto the significant registry. Like yes. Okay, so with that, I'll call the question. All in favor? Thank you, and that is carried. So members of council, I just noticed that the kinsman is here, so welcome Ed Bernie to council chambers. And I mentioned earlier, we're just going to take a recess from where we are now and go back to 4.2 for the presentation of the kinsman. So welcome.
Mr. Mayor, council, administration, and public, first of all, I apologize. Situations occurred, and I was going to be late, and the person I presumed was attending is out of town for work. So our sincerest apologies to you. You have such a busy council. But today, I'm here to, first of all, thank the council for what you did on the 20th. It's an incredible thing to celebrate 100 years of service to a country. And you flying the flag over our community from that day through till today just reinforced the partnership that the kinsmen and the kinettes and the kin have with their communities. And Stony Plain is one of the, at the highest level that I can speak to of how we work together to make this place that we live in and call home such a better place. Since our meeting, I've been challenged about some numbers, like how much money gives back every year. And I'm happy to say that I found out last year, 2019, the Kin Clubs put $20 million back into Canada. And so I think the number is over $1 billion since 1920. So we, as the Kinsman Club of Stony Plain, represent that greater group. There are so many great individuals across this country who do so much, and I'm just so happy to wear the shirt. I've never been so happy as the last week, and the outpouring of support from our community members, our business, our council. We're an incredible community, and we're so proud to be part of that. And last year, including our hampers, which is the biggest charity thing we do, over $350,000 went back to the Tri-Region from our club, and over $300,000 by the Kinettes in Spruce Grove. All of that money was generated here, and it all goes back here. So we're just so proud to be part of that, and we're extremely thankful to county, the city of Spruce Grove, and most of all to you for all the help we get in all of the things we do, because it takes a community to make a community better, and we're just happy to be your partner. And that goes to our administration friends. They are incredible. We can't thank them enough. And I could answer any questions if there are some, but thank you very much for having me here today.
Thank you very much for coming and making the presentation. And on behalf of our community, thank you very much for the work that you guys have done to help build it. You mentioned that Kins Canada has been celebrating 100 years as an organization and donated over $20 million over last year and about close to $1 billion over the last 100 years. But the Stony Plain Kinsmen has been celebrating their 40th anniversary in the town of Stony Plain. Yeah. So on behalf of our residents, thank you for the volunteer hours that you guys have donated to your community to make it better. Figure out that if we paid you for every hour, we would all be broke, and we'd be turning our keys over back to the province. Yeah. And then we also want to thank you for taking care of the social needs of our community. You mentioned that it takes a community to raise the community and build it better, and you're absolutely right. As municipality, there are certain things that we are obligated to do through the MGA, and there's things that we're not supposed to do. And that's where our community groups, such as the Kinsmen, come into play. Looking after the infrastructure of our people. That's what makes us a strong community. So on behalf of our community, thank you very much for that. Okay. Members of council, any questions and comments to Mr. Bernie? Go ahead, Councillor Meyer.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'd only add to the mayor's glowing remarks. Just an experience I had going to St. Matthew's 125-year anniversary, and you appreciate that the history of this. I mean, it doesn't go that far back. So 40 years is older than I am. You guys have always been a fixture in the community as far as I've known. So just a nod to the historical relevance that you guys have put your mark on this town.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any comments?
Thank you for the kind words, and we're just honored to serve in this community. You know, our motto is serve the community's greatest need, and whether that's, you know, the hampers or, you know, equipment for our seniors or special needs, it's what the community needs, right? And we're just the conduit. The community supports us incredibly, and we're just we just get to be the face, the pretty face to well, not so pretty, whatever. We get to be the face of a community that really pulls together for everything, and you know, just proud to be a member of this community.
Yeah. Thank you. And we have the flag, so would you like to take a picture with us, please, in front of the council?
Please. So we bought an extra flag and we're flying it at the museum already. If the town would like to keep that, we would be honored for you to have it. If not, we will definitely find a place. All right, very well. Okay. Remember to sign it. Awesome.
Another hand for the Kinsmen. Thank you. And what a great presentation from the Kinsmen. It's 40 years in our community and 40 years of supporting all the needs and raising children, raising families, and all the same time dedicating their free time to build a community to what it is today. So thank you much. Ladies and gentlemen, continuing on our agenda, we're looking at 9.3, 2020 ARB members. Go ahead, administration.
Thank you, Your Worship. So as council knows, we do contract out our assessment to the Capital Region Assessment Services Commission. So they do the assessment for the town as well as provide us the ARB, the Assessment Review Board. So we're legislated by the MGA as well as our own bylaw to annually appoint the panelists that would sit on that ARB, as well as the chair and the clerk. All members are required to take provincially legislated training, and we have our own Councillor Bennett as one of the panelists, and she's done her training and is up to date. And so we're just asking council to approve these members tonight. I believe that these are the same members that have been there in the past. We haven't had any assessment review board hearings in the past number of years, but it needs to be there should a complaint be filed. The other thing for council's information is the assessment has gone out for the town in the last week. And we are hosting an open house for any residents that have questions about assessment on March 10th. So that kicks off the assessment process within the town. I can answer any questions that there may be.
Great. Thank you very much. Councillor Lord, please, for the motion.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'll move that Town Council appoint A, Judy Bennett, Darlene Chartrand, Tina Roscoe, Stuart Henning, Richard Knowles, and Raymond Ralph as panelists to the Local Assessment Review Board and Composite Assessment Review Board for 2020. B, Raymond Ralph as the chair for the Local Assessment Review Board and Composite Assessment Review Board for 2020. And C, Richard Barham as clerk to the Local Assessment Review Board and Composite Assessment Review Board for 2020.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Laurie. Members of council, any questions for administration? Okay. Seeing none, I have a question just for administration. I know we've been part of the Capital Regional Assessment Board for many years now, and I believe in regionalism, and it works well to lower our costs. But at some point, there has to be an evaluation to see if it's still valuable to us as a community and saves us dollars to being part of this commission. Are we at the point where we can go on our own?
Your Worship, I would say we haven't looked at that in detail, but with the new manager of finance, which assessment rolls up under, I would expect that to be fresh eyes looking and asking those questions and comparing to what she's seen in other municipalities. So I would say that we'll start with that, and I think it's a great question that we'll definitely look into and can report back to council on that.
Okay, thank you. Anything else? Okay, see none, I'll call the question. All in favor? And that is carried. Moving on to 9.4 is the 2019 fourth quarter report. Go ahead, administration.
Your Worship, again, nothing, sorry, I was trying to find a quick page that I was going to reference, actually, Your Worship. Okay. Thank you, Your Worship. Again, quarterly report in front of council. This is finishing off 2019, and as per usual, we're certainly able to answer any questions or provide any sort of further understanding that council may have. Again, Your Worship, I don't normally point out a whole lot of specifics in the report. I know that council takes the time to look through it in detail. On this particular one, I was going to draw council's attention to page 92, talking about our core audit, our safety audit. This particular year was the external audit. So just some general background. This is essentially an audit of our safety system, our internal occupational health and safety system. We will do internal reviews where our own staff just go through the audit protocol, you know, checking our systems and making sure things are filed properly, or that being questions to our staff about, does your supervisor inform you about safety things, and so on and so forth. It's a fairly detailed process. Every 3 years we have an external one. And frankly, we do put a little more weight into the external one, the number that comes back from it and so on. I think it's noted here that the audit protocols have undergone, quite a bit of change, frankly, with changing legislation over the last 4 years or so. And the audit protocols have been altered to match that to a degree. It's starting to, level out a little bit. But frankly, Your Worship, we're quite proud of the numbers that came in this year. And as you know, or you may be aware, Josh Reshore, our occupational health and safety coordinator, works very diligently at making sure our systems are strong and in an effort obviously to protect our workers from harm, whichever way that may be. The other comment I was going to make on the OHS side of the world is that there's we're seeing across the board, there's more of a shift to, and I may not use the proper words, but the mental health aspects of staff members and mental illness and so on and so forth, which I believe broad stroke is a very good thing. It's a good thing for our organization, the people in it. It's a good thing for our society and community that these challenges are being brought out into the open and addressed and so on and so forth. That's a bit of a change for a lot of organizations to to start having to be more aware and how do we manage that and systemize it and so on and so forth. But it's ultimately a good challenge for us to undertake. The final thing I guess I'll say about this, Your Worship, safety, and I've been involved for quite a while now. We try to build these systems up. We try to make sure our staff are aware that they have, part of the act is that, when an employee has the right to refuse unsafe work. And it's a, pretty all-encompassing right, and it's taken seriously. And, we try to have these conversations on an ongoing basis in the organization. I'm proud to say that over my own career, Your Worship, that you can see a shift in safety as it's applied in organizations, which again is generally a very good thing. The ultimate goal is to, we say, or I say to our staff, you may be here for eight hours a day, but you're with your family for the other 16. And, the idea is to get people home to their families, and that's the basics. And, the shift or the change into the mental health aspects of things are, again, a bit of a challenge, frankly, but ultimately a very, very good thing for all of us in the long run. So, Your Worship, I'll leave it at that. Again, I don't normally pick out specific things in this report to talk to council about, but this one I think is important, and it's something that in many ways is near and dear to my heart. So I'll stop there, Your Worship. Certainly myself or the staff can answer any questions about anything contained in the quarterly report.
Okay, thank you. So members of council, you had a chance to read it. So Councillor Meyer for the motion, please.
Excuse me. The town council accepts the 2019 fourth quarter report for information.
Okay, members of council, any questions and comments regarding the fourth quarter report that we've just read? Councillor Laurie?
Thank you, Your Worship. Referring to page 86 in the capital projects. I noticed we've got downtown phase 2 was budgeted at $2.378 million and it's showing at $1.52 million is complete. I see phase 3 is on here, which still has a significant carry forward. Is this $2.378 million that was the anticipated cost for the work that was completed that only came in at 1.52, or was it only 1.52 because some of the work from phase 2 was allocated to a different phase? Essentially, do we have true savings here of approximately $800,000, or is it just work that was deferred into a different phase, and so we may see phase 3's actual expenditure inflated above the budgetary amount?
Yeah, good question. Go ahead.
Yeah, Your Worship, through you to Councillor Laurie. So the project has 4 phases, as I'm sure you're all aware, and we're working to the combined budget of all 4, which is estimated to be right on budget at this time. There will be no substantial savings or cost decreases of any kind to our expectation at this time. There is some contingencies that we're monitoring closely and trying to manage well, but yeah, the whole project 2, 3, and 4 is expected to come in at the approved budget.
Thank you, Your Worship. And the reason why I bring that up is because as we see reporting coming through for phases 3 and phases 4, I don't necessarily want to see a significant over budget in the way that this is reported, because I would like clarity to our residents to understand that the project on the whole is on budget. And if we report phase 4 as $800,000 over budget, nobody tends to look back to phase 2 to see that it was actually $800,000 under budget. So maybe just something to keep in mind as we move forward on reporting to show the entire project as one rather than the separation out of the phases. I know we might have to for financial years and so on and so forth, but I'd just like to be very clear as this moves forward that we're not expressing to our residents we're over budget, that it truly is on budget.
Yes, good comments. And also to refresh council's memories, phase 2, even though it says complete, is not quite complete. There is the one side against the library that we still need to complete and have a few things done there. So that's probably carried over instead of should to be carried over. But I guess if you want to close the loop on phase 2, and you add that to phase 3 or phase 4 when we come back to finish it. So it does show that impression that even though phase 2 is $800 less, if phase 4 is $800,000 more because the work was put over, if residents just see phase 4 and they think it's over by $800,000, not taking effect the entire budget is actually on budget, is because we changed some of the numbers around because we couldn't finish phase 2 as we wanted. So good comments. Okay, Deputy Mayor, go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just a comment, with regards to what Councillor Laurie had spoken about, is that sometimes it would just be nice to have a little bit of a detailed explanation under a graph that would tell us. And I'll give you an example, with the pavilion, where it was booked for a total of 548 hours compared to 2018 of 517 hours. But I guess my comment is that attributable to the federal election as opposed to the growth that we see moving forward? And so just a little bit more detail would be helpful in terms of explaining what the reason is for the change.
Okay, thank you. And you can also ask the question, so I'll just turn it over to the general manager. So with the increases of the Heritage Park Pavilion, was that for the federal election? Or did they not use the pavilion and they used the Heritage Park side?
Your Worship, through to Deputy Mayor Matties and balance of council, I would have to go back and look at the details there. I would assume that because we did have the federal election out there, that did contribute to the increase in hours, but I would also suggest that there are other events that were hosted out there that also contributed to that. So the thing that we look at is there's more and increased use at that particular site. Interesting would be if next year we're showing a decrease from this particular quarter, then certainly that would be the elections that, because it wouldn't happen next year, that would have spiked that. But we're seeing a rise in rentals at that facility across the board. So a lot more people are coming out here. You're recently at that venue with an AUMA event, and so others are seeing and recognizing that we're close to the city. It's a large venue. It can provide perhaps the costing is a little bit cheaper than venues in the city, and perhaps some of our catering options are a little bit cheaper than places in the city, and people are traveling to the city anyway for meetings. Coming to Stony Plain is on their route also. So I think it's providing an excellent opportunity for people to do some of those types of things where people are actually traveling to a site for a particular event.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments? Councillor Meyer, go ahead.
It's kind of a combination question, comment. Just on page 84, speaking about the Glen Hall arena. So I'm happy to see Ringette in 2019, 2020 as a little bit more hours. So I know I made a comment of that last year, so I'm glad to see it partially addressed. I just adding up the hours from 2017, 2018, and 2018, 2019. You find about 40 hours, and then the bookings for 2019, 2020. Again, finding an additional 120 hours. I'm confused because I was left with the impression that the Glen Hall was booked solid and it was difficult to find hours. So is this just extending, through you to administration, how do we find these hours?
The difference between booking and usage, because I think that's the because there's two different terminologies.
Yeah, no, I can appreciate that we maybe overbook because we anticipate there's probably a few. I'm just saying that each year, even 2017 compared to 2018, we found 40 additional hours. Is that just them utilizing it? Are we actually just extending maybe later into the evening? Where do we find these hours? Or plan on finding them, as the bookings kind of indicate.
So, Your Worship, through to Councillor Meyer, just for clarification, when you're tabulating each of the columns to get a total at the bottom, correct? For each of the years, is that correct?
That's how I did it.
Yep. Okay. So basically, you're calculating the usage of all our user groups. So throughout the particular year, a user group may have more or less ice time based on their particular bookings. For us, our season may go a little bit longer depending on playoffs. We may start a little bit earlier depending on the frequency of which the ice is needed. Typically, our ice is booked. It's booked solid. Some groups finish their season earlier, so they get more ice time. The availability of ice time is more for them. So as an example, with ringettes, as you've noticed, there's more ice time opportunity for them. Minor hockey turns some ice back to us because they don't require it. So we reach out to our user groups, provide them the opportunity to book more ice at the Glen Hall Arena. So sometimes in finding that usage, it's dependent on the schedule, the start and finish time. It also depends on when teams finish or start their seasons. As an example, a lot of minor hockey teams right now are finishing their seasons. So that opens up the ice for other user groups. So it's not it's contributing to their overall hours, but you can see some will decline in their hour usage. But that's a reasonable explanation. We can dig deeper into that if you require more information.
No, I'm fairly happy with that. If I can just repeat it back to you, basically, successful teams extend their season. That's the longer whatnot. Okay, I'm good with that.
Yes, and usually with bookings, so as the general manager said, so they're booked for a certain ice time, and sometimes they give that back, and sometimes we can't resell it.
Right.
So we don't want to be charging, even though they, for example, Ringhead is booked for 119 hours, but if they only used 80, well, we don't want to be charging them for 119, even though that we could probably do that because we allocate them ice time, but then as an organization, Ringhead would be scrambling for money because they didn't use it and didn't have games, etc. So that's where the changes are from usage to booking.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. And just the question, since we're on that page, because I do have a comment regarding that. Can administration explain the difference between minor hockey and junior hockey?
Your worship, minor hockey is your Stony Plain minor hockey group, so that would be typically the 18 and under. So they've changed the titles recently, so I think it's U15, U17, U13. They're not midget, peewee, bantam anymore, but that's the typical age groups that we're talking about. The junior hockey is the Flyers playing out of the Glen Hall Arena.
Okay, thank you. Councilor, you had a question on the same page? So.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. Again, yeah, question on 84 and follow-up more so on Councilor Meyer's comments. As mentioned, looking at this chart, we have actual usage from 2017, 2018, 2018, 2019, and then we have the bookings. Councilor Meyer brought up a great point of the discrepancy between the booking numbers and the usage numbers. And I'm just interested from an administration standpoint, is that something that we take into consideration when doing the allocations? So for instance, if we have, and I'll use Ringette as an example just based on these numbers here. For instance, their 2019-20 bookings are 119 hours, but their 2018-19 usage was only 62.5. So if at the end of 2019 and 20, if their realized usage was only 62.5 or approximately 50% of what they booked, how does that then play into the following year's bookings? And the reason why I'm asking this is from an efficiency standpoint, when we need to ensure that, for one, the facility is being put to best use, and for two, there's a fair allocation to all groups. How do we essentially ensure that groups aren't drastically overestimating the amount of time that they will use in order to secure the ice, and then it potentially ends up sitting as black ice because they cancel it because the team didn't make the playoffs or they didn't have as many teams registered as they anticipated?
Your Worship, through to Councillor Laurie. So the 1920 bookings, we can't give you confirmed times because the season doesn't finish for another month or two. So some of those numbers will be accurate in terms of teams using ice. We could probably look at some of that and confirm that the 119 for a Ringette certainly will be used. I know with the Ringette, they don't really turn a lot of ice back because it's difficult for them to get ice in this region at any of our ice facilities. Typically, when we have an ice user meeting in the fall, or just before in June, we ask what their desired ice scheduling time is. We put that into our bank and we go back and we say, based on what you used last year, there's a discrepancy, let us know why you need that increase or the decrease. And often the teams don't have all the registrations in also, so once they do have the registration in, they'll come back to us and say, hey, we, like minor hockey did this year, we're actually giving a big chunk of ice back, so you can reallocate that through the users. We are working on a regional ice allocation plan right now with the TLC and City of Spruce Grove. hoping that that will be ready to implement in the upcoming season, where collectively all three ice operators are looking at the overall need and assigning the ice accordingly so that we've got more efficient use of the ice across the region. And they've got some parameters as to how that ice would be allocated out to each of the user groups. For the most part, we look at youth as the number one for ice allocation. Then we get into local adult users, and then you continue on to outside users beyond that. So the taxpayers of our community would be the first into our facility because that's who's paying the deficit on that individual facility. So we'd make sure that our local user, i.e. Stony Plain Minor Hockey. With that, it's a bit tricky. Stony Plain Minor Hockey, Ringette, Skating Club, they typically use a number of ice hours per year. Unless they turn back ice to us, it's difficult for us to take ice away from them to afford it to other users. So it's a bit of a historical system. Again, we're looking at that to ensure that we can have some equity for all the groups across the region related to ice allocation, because every community gets into that tricky situation of there's a historical usage by certain users. Very difficult for a speed skating club to even start in Stony Plain because we really don't have a lot of ice, but should that be a barrier to a club wanting to start in Stony Plain? The challenge for us is whose ice are we taking away to allocate for a new startup club in Stony Plain, and what is our role in ensuring that development of different ice activities happen in the community. So going back to your question, long-winded, we certainly do look at the previous year and how much ice they gave back, and if we're continually on a week-to-week basis having some impacts of them not giving ice back soon enough for us to sell or redistribute to our users, that would certainly weigh in on how much ice we would give back to that particular user group in the following year, because they're not utilizing the ice to the best effective opportunity.
Appreciate it, thank you.
Any other questions, comments regarding the fourth quarter? And again, I assume that once council accepts some information, then our communication staff will be pushing out these numbers and highlighting what's happened in the fourth quarter. Yes. Okay. I'm going to ask council to turn to page 76, if nobody has any more questions. I do have a question, and I don't know if I'm reading this correctly, but I have to thank the community peace officers, because looking at the fourth quarter results of the total files under community standards, last year in 2018 was 300, in 2019 is 37. So that's a huge decrease. So I guess good job. I don't know what else to say when you look at that.
Your Worship, just a quick comment. Stats and graphs are tricky this way. We could have had a tremendous amount of snow in the fourth quarter of last year, which the ice and snow files would have contributed to that greatly. If I recall this time last year, I do think we had a lot of melt and ice that the peace officers had to go out and deal with, and there was pretty much a daily stream of people complaining about ice and snow buildup on people's sidewalks. I'm fairly certain that would have been the spike in that particular one. I can look at that and provide you more commentary via email if you wish.
Good, and I appreciate that, because that looks really good. But if you turn to the next page, on page 78, where it says total annual files generated, community standards for 2018 is 400, 219 is 653. So if we had a decrease of 260 complaints in the fourth quarter, then that shows me the first, second, and third quarter we have an issue with our community, because that increased it by 1, 2, 3, about 300 more complaints in those 3 quarters. So if we can provide some feedback on that, because the numbers don't jive. If we did so well in the fourth quarter, then the first, second, and third quarter are huge discrepancies. We did the community standards last year.
Your worship, certainly I can provide more feedback through email. The tricky thing with enforcement is when you're looking at the stats, reduction either means compliance or non-compliance if we have a substantial amount of files. Also, it can mean a lot of different things. So when we look at that, I'm not sure that our CPOs have failed or succeeded in any manner. It's a lot of it is generated from the public in terms of a complaint base, but certainly can bring through email more clarity on those community standards files in those 2 years.
Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate it. Yeah. Thank you. Any other questions, comments regarding the fourth quarter results? Report. No. Okay, thank you. With that, I'll call the question. All in favor? And that is carried. Thank you. Again, on behalf of the residents and council, thank you much for providing that report. It's always good to see what's happened in the last quarter. Time seems to fly by. If you look at some of the events, it's almost been 6 months since those events happened, so that's how fast time moves to us. Okay, moving on to 9.5, which is the FCSS 2019 fourth quarter report. And go ahead, administration.
Your worship, again, this is provided by FCSS. We can certainly try to answer some of the questions, but can't speak necessarily directly to what's in or what is not in here.
Okay. And the good thing is that we have our council representative, Deputy Mayor Matties, on hand, so she might be able to answer some of the questions that council may have. Okay. With that, Councillor Loy, please, the motion, please.
Yes, Your Worship. The Town Council accept the Stony Plain FCSS 2019 fourth quarter report for information.
Okay, thank you. Members of Council, have you had a chance to read them, the fourth quarter report? So any questions and comments regarding that? Councillor Meyer, go ahead.
No, this is mostly just my lack of knowledge that this question comes from. But on page 103, it's just at the top of the page, it's talking increasing inclusion and diversity, and it speaks about a report. Right, what is that? Left-hand column, last, anyhow, it says visit the Stony Plain FCSS to read the full community report. Anyhow, I'm trying to find this report so I could read it. Maybe in an email response, sorry, through you to administration, if I could get maybe administration to forward me that report, I would appreciate it.
Okay, that's good. Deputy Mayor, do you have any comments on that?
It was just a comment that there was a number of meetings that we had to talk about inclusion and identify the groups that are maybe not part of the inclusion formula. So some, for example, an immigrant moving to our community, or a minority group, or individuals potentially with maybe health or disability issues, or seniors. And so making sure that we're identifying all the groups that we need to make sure that we're working on inclusion and ensuring that everybody is included in our community. So she was completing a report based on the findings that we had through those meetings.
Okay, thank you. And if we can have the director send a link to us. Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Meyer. Anything else? Deputy Mayor, go ahead.
Your Worship, I have a question. It's a broad question, but in terms of the programming that Stony Plain FCSS has relative to Spruce Grove, as I read through this, and then I kind of took just a review of the quarterly report for FCSS and Spruce Grove, and there's a lot of similarities, and I guess I'm just asking about, is there a possibility of having one report, or are we so different that we require having both communities provide separate quarterly reports?
Your Worship, I certainly can provide a bit of comment on that, but again, won't speak directly for FCSS or the Executive Director. A top of head answer, Your Worship, and through to the Deputy Mayor, they are two separate entities. If there's an ability to coordinate or match their communication from time to time. I know that they do that. I know, speaking with our executive director, that's a conversation they have often with Spruce Grove FCSS. As to joint quarterly reports or annual reports, I would estimate, Your Worship, that they would probably prefer to keep that separate and report on their specific initiatives to, in this case, to council, in that case, to the community and to internally or what have you.
May I follow up? Yes, just following up on that. So I guess it's not that, I just felt that potentially there'd be an opportunity to provide most of, a summary of most of the programming that, in terms of the description of the different programs, et cetera, under one report, which would then maybe allow some man-hours that would be able to work on other forms of social media. I find sometimes, like, I cannot find documents or information about Stony Plain, FCSS. I might be able to find Spruce Grove, and wondering if there could be a greater emphasis on some of the other communication pieces, if they were working together on, for example, a quarterly report. So just a suggestion and something that I haven't brought up before.
That's a good comment, Deputy Mayor. I know our FCSS and City of Spruce Grove do a lot of programming together, but they also do a lot of different things together. So I think maybe things that they do in partnership and in tandem, then those things could be cut and pasted, like newspaper. So it saves some time, and then just have it kind of tweaked for the programs that we have. Like, for example, we have the youth center in Town Stony Plain, but they don't have one in City of Spruce Grove, right? So it's kind of make sure that the report has to be geared enough that it's actually providing what we're actually doing in our community. So that's a good comment to bring back to your board to see if they can kind of make it a little bit more efficient. Okay, any other questions regarding the fourth quarter report on FCSS? Okay. Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor, and that is carried. Okay, and that ends our business items. Moving on to information items and council discussion. We'll start with Councillor Loy. Welcome back from the frozen Arctic. I'm glad you didn't turn into popsicle.
There were moments.
Anything to update council on?
No, thank you very much, and it is good to be back. I enjoy council meetings and, working with council for the benefit of the town. I just have one comment. If you notice, I wore my pink shirt, pink tie, pink socks. I'll stop there. But wearing pink tonight in support of the anti-bullying awareness. And that is this Wednesday is the actual day, so I would encourage everybody to not only wear pink, but don't be afraid. Just tell people why you're wearing pink. And we don't have any room for bullying. Just a simple comment. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Meyer.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just quickly, I did have an opportunity to speak with a resident today who presented an idea to me regarding lowering our speed limit in town. And, I should have said before that, what actually raised that was we had the peace officers out there enforcing just up by the APFA building. She was very happy to see that. I wanted to thank you guys for the enforcement. Thank you, she said. Anyhow, but while we were discussing it, she did suggest, well, there are so many kids going around that area. There are so many kids that walk to the schools on sort of north and south of there. It's almost like a school zone with the amount of traffic there, and that we ought to consider that, or her other idea was to just lower the speed limit all throughout town. But anyhow, so that I wanted to mention. And then just secondly, a little bit of criticism. If we turn to page 71, I think the picture at the top there really encapsulates what I've heard from a number of residents, the challenges there. The snow there, I mean, if you can imagine a senior trying to cross that parking spots, that looks treacherous, and I know it is. And then specifically around those bulb outs, the snow piled up there. People have told me many a times, and I appreciate the purpose is a traffic calming feature, but with the addition of the snow piled up around there, a tight turn is made that much tighter. So anyhow, having seen that picture in the report, I thought I would just make that available to you guys, I guess. Or voice it.
Your worship, if I can comment on that, maybe generally, maybe specifically, I guess, but, you know, I do think it's fair for me to say that we're learning our way around the maintenance of the ball boats. And I know that both our general manager of CAPS and planning infrastructure were discussing this, I believe, last week or so. One of the other challenges that we've had is on, you know, I mean, who's responsible for what exactly on the ball boats? You know, we have to make sure that we're doing a job. If we're, even our idea is that, you know, the main part of the ball boat, if that's what we're calling them, I guess, you know, will be the responsibility of the town. And we need to make sure that we're maintaining that to a level that's acceptable to the rest of the business owners in the downtown. Frankly, you know, I mean, as you guys are well aware, we've got some pretty diligent business owners out there that keep the sidewalks looking good and salted and so on, or whatever they've got on them to keep them free. I mean, I was out on one of those corners myself not too long ago, you know, and we've had a bit of a freeze thaw and melting and, you know, I mean, some ice and all that sort of stuff going on. But, you know, there's the way they're angled, the way they're sloped, the way they're, the construction thereof and all that sort of stuff. So, you know, just again, your worship, back to Councillor Meyer's comments, you know, we have been looking at these things and how are we going to do this, how are we going to do it better, so on and so forth. But, you know, the reality is that we are learning that too. We're learning a little bit about what works, what doesn't. It's one thing to see the drawings and say, yes, this will fit a machine or not or whatever, but you know, when the snow comes, that's the reality, and then, you know, we're figuring that out as we go along a little bit here. But you know, I mean, the idea is to make sure they're maintained to a high standard. So I'll leave it at that, your worship, but just want to acknowledge that it is a challenge and we're working on it.
Okay, thank you. Anything else, Councillor Meyer? Okay, Councillor Lordy.
Thank you, Your Worship, and actually just tag on to Councillor Meyer's comments there in respect to downtown. Almost everywhere else in town where either business owners or residents have a responsibility of cleaning a municipal sidewalk, there is somewhere for them to put that snow. Town bylaws technically do not allow anybody to shovel the snow into the roadway. On Main Street, there is no opportunity for that snow to go anywhere. So I really do think we need to take a look at that, take a look at the fact that those sidewalks are significantly oversized, not by the choice of the business, but by the choice of the municipality for the attractiveness of downtown. And again, I would completely agree. The compaction of snow and ice in the parking spots, likely caused by the snow from the sidewalks being pushed onto the roads, makes it very difficult for anyone, seniors or otherwise, getting out of their vehicle between the point from there to the sidewalk. So I do think that, you know, this is kind of the first real kick at the can of having some of these bulb outs done and having a significant portion of Main Street done. But I think we're seeing a bit of a theme here that if we don't come up with a better plan for snow removal on the downtown sidewalks and streets, it's going to continue to be an issue over and over and over again. So thank you very much for bringing that up this evening, Councillor Meyer. Sticking with this theme of snow removal, I am graciously anticipating our service level review next fall. You know, obviously we had a lot of commentary prior to snow removal starting. Since snow removal has started, the commentary still exists. It's just shifted to everything from not enough notice to requirement or residents asking for tickets and tows and so on and so forth. So I think there's a lot of community feedback that can be just collected by talking to any resident around town right now or paying attention to any type of media feeds. But I do want to call attention to a couple of things where, as I've mentioned before, we set the example for our residents, and it's about communication and it's about service levels. First thing is, when I see our posts on social media regarding snow removal, and when I see the way that our policies are written, our signs are supposed to be up 24 hours before removal. Well, if we've paid attention to how snow removal has gone, the signs are appearing in neighborhoods by about 3, 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and the graders are there by 6 o'clock the next morning. It's barely 12 hours. And so especially for anybody who works out of town or works extended shifts or so on and so forth, the notice on that is poor, and that compounds a problem because one of the biggest complaints from residents is the amount of vehicles that are left on the roadways and the incomplete job that is being done because of that. So between the communication and the actual execution, we need to ensure that we're doing service to our residents by giving them enough notice and enough time. When we look at the website for the schedule, I mean, it does kind of give you the order in which the communities are done, but it gives you no indication as to how long, for instance, West Terra is going to take versus Greybrier. Two very different size subdivisions. Or, you know, you can look at many different subdivisions. And so as the schedule goes, some will say in progress, some will say upcoming, but it doesn't say, you know, it's upcoming tomorrow or it's upcoming in 3 days. Our news releases are coming out in the afternoon, and for anybody who's subscribed to those news releases, that's great. They get that information fresh in their mailbox and they know that afternoon, but if they're not subscribed to those, which we still have many residents in our town who don't even have internet access in their home, they're not seeing that. So that's something that as we have our service level review conversation in the fall, we really need to take a look at. From example setting as well, the clearing of drains, of the storm drains along the streets. I noticed in many, many areas that through the plowing, the storm drains are still completely iced over. And as we get into these warmer weather events that we're going to start having here over the next couple of weeks, as spring hopefully is upon us, I don't want to see us end up in these challenges where we have more and more flooding issues because we haven't been able to clear drains. And so I'd like to make sure that we're on top of the drains because I've already noticed throughout town there's a significant number of them recovered. From an emergency services perspective, fire hydrants. We have countless fire hydrants on town property that our graders have buried. Countless hydrants that are very difficult to access. And it only takes driving to the community next door and driving down their main arteries and their main roads to see that they set the example for the residents, because even though there's a giant windrow, wherever there's a fire hydrant, it's completely cleared. Not only that, but it also has a marker arm that extends several feet up into the air. So even with the windrows there, the emergency services can still see the hydrants. And I know that we do have other technology that shows our emergency services where hydrants are, etc. But here's where the challenge comes in. We're not taking care of our fire hydrants. And I would challenge any council member right now to travel through our local subdivisions and find how many fire hydrants are buried in local subdivisions. We have a bylaw that states it must be cleared 1 meter around. And I can tell you in an emergency situation, the minute that it would take to clear around that fire hydrant can literally make the difference between life and death. It's a good bylaw to have, and it's a good service level that should be maintained. But no residents are doing it, and it's not being enforced. And we as the town are not setting the example because we're not doing it either. So that definitely needs to be addressed. And then the second is in respect to the town paths and sidewalks versus the residential community standards bylaw. I've faced many phone calls, emails, and conversations with people who are receiving visits from the peace officers in respect to the ice and the snow, which understandable. However, again, the conversation continually comes back to, well, this is the condition of the town sidewalks. And this area of the town is covered in ice. And again, as we go through freeze-thaw, we understand that this becomes complicated and complex. But what I'm hearing from residents is that the standard being expected of residents is not the standard being upheld by the town. And I think we need to make sure that our service level expectations are above or at least comparable to the expectations of what we expect our residents to maintain their sidewalks to. So again, a lot to consider. I'm looking forward to a very comprehensive review of our service level standards for snow removal when it comes, hopefully before next winter. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for bringing those forward, and those are some of the comments that I had for the future as well. Moving on to Deputy Mayor. Any comments to add or to update council with?
I do. And then, am I allowed to talk about committee meetings and committees I've been at this time? Okay.
If you think it's worthwhile to council to update them, go ahead.
Sounds great. Okay. So one comment again, consistent with my colleagues, I've had a complaint with regards to this slippery surface. So going back to page 71, that even when there isn't snow on these sidewalks around in this case it's the post office, that it is extraordinarily slippery. And you know, when I'm looking at the downtown, we've basically had architectural design of what this is to be. We've implemented that, but I'm wondering if, as we go to this last phase, based on some of these learnings, are we making some changes to, for example, the sidewalk surface? Are we making a change to maybe the big size of this bollard? Like, I look at bollards in a lot of other areas where they have a cement that is more narrow, more easy to move around, and is that a possibility moving forward?
Your worship, through you to Councillor Matty, so we're not looking at making any changes to the design at this time. I would suspect if there are slippery or safety issues on the sidewalk that need to be addressed with other means rather than changing the design. These designs are accepted in many communities. Grit and other methods would have to be utilized if it's deemed to be a safety hazard based on potential for slipping.
Thank you.
So just to add to that, because I was out a couple weeks ago doing some filming for our State of the Region address, and that intersection where the post office is compared to the other side where Drayton Insurance is. Drayton Insurance area with the ball bulbs, it's more of a flat area, and it's not slippery. Down by the post office, it's slanted away, so therefore it does feel a little more slippery. So that is something that we'll have to address in terms of how to make sure that it stays dry so it is less slippery as possible, just because of the slope of the sidewalk there.
Thank you. I'll just continue on with some of the information items that I attended the Pioneer Museum Model Train grand opening, which was just an excellent event, lots of people there, but I also had the opportunity to speak with the Executive Director, David, prior to the meeting, and we talked about that I missed the fact that they were not coming anymore for an annual meeting to update us, and I know that's with regards to the funding formula. But we did discuss the importance of keeping the Pioneer Museum top of mind with council, and that he also talked about that they do have additional financial needs with regards to staffing for programming. So how are we going to get this information if they do not come to meet with council? So if there's a way we can have them join us on an annual basis to provide us with updates and maybe talk to us about some of the specific needs they have moving forward, is that a possibility, administration?
Yes, it is, Councillor Matthews. When council chose to not have them come back each and every year to ask for funding, so that is based on a 3-year contract that we sign with all our user groups. If they have anything that's new that they want to report to council, or they want to do a new program, and they want to inform council and ask for funding, they can do that anytime. They just got to submit a request saying, hey, I want to come and talk about this.
Yeah.
So again, it was to free them up, so instead of them being here yearly to say, can we have the same amount of funding that we had before? Can we have this, right? We didn't want to do that. So that was taken care of in terms of a 3-year contract. If there's new things and new initiatives, then they can come and then they can present it to us and they can ask for funding. And then as a council, then we can decide if yes or no.
And it would be great if we just make sure that our organizations are aware that we encourage them to come. So there has to be some invitation that says, it's important for us to hear your message and to be updated. So that's just one suggestion. Secondly, then I had the chamber luncheon with, and many of us attended that with Dane Lloyd being the guest speaker, and he spoke about the coronavirus and the rail blockades, but specifically with regards to the coronavirus, he talked about that the opportunity for Canada to consider on a national basis how we're going to address these types of things. Of course, it's continuing to spread, in France and South Korea, and for example, today the markets were down 1,000 points because of the spread and the risk that people are feeling that it's going to affect our economic situation, never mind the social aspect of this. So I think as a community that we do need to ensure that our federal government is, through our representative, is informed that we care about that we want to make sure that, because these viruses will come. How are we going to address that? and how would our community address that if we had that situation? Then we went to the town hall meeting with MLA Cyril Turton facilitating the Fair Deal panel. We had 2 members come out from the Fair Deal panel, very interested to hear what the community spoke about and were concerned about. What I heard was that people are frustrated, they're struggling financially, but also many were not fully informed about the issues that they were addressing that evening. What they were asking, the Alberta Fair Deal is asking all of our citizens to, through email or through other means, contact this organization to talk about, what do they feel is a fair deal, whether that is with regards to Confederation, the election process, Canada pension plan versus an Alberta pension plan, or transfer payments. So it was just a very informative meeting, and glad that we had MLA Cyril Turton facilitating that in our community. And then finally, I attended the Coldest Night of the Year event. I had the opportunity to walk with Team Starry Night, which was Angela Fetch's team. There was 3 of us on that team, my husband, myself, and Angela. We had a really good time and enjoyed, after a 5-kilometer walk, some hot chocolate, some soup, and really good conversations with people. So, great event.
Okay, thank you, Councilor Matties. And just to update members of council, if you haven't participated in the pop-up events for transit, make sure you pop in. Actually, it's very interesting to see the diversity of people that are attending and just showing up, because we've done it at the library, we've done it at Safeway, I believe. So, and we've done it at Glen Hall Arena. And again, we have had the open house here in Town Stony playing chambers again. So again, just trying to get to get an understanding of what our residents think that they require and what they deem necessary for the next couple months, where we decide on a kind of a loop or a transit or a park and ride for our community as we start transit in September of 2020. And again, Councilor Loy mentioned it, so it's February 26th on Wednesday is Pink Shirt Day. Again, it's just to be kind to each other. I don't think it's good to take a day to recognize that, but we should be doing that each and every day, as we should be kind to everybody, because we don't understand what battles people are going through internally, externally. We don't know their life journey, so it's always just good just to be kind to everybody. And again, maybe a question for administration with the I guess the warmer weather is causing havoc on our roads, and a lot more potholes are appearing sooner than later. Are staff prepared to and ready to go to do some hot mix or cold mix to fill those?
Your worship, at this time, we are not prepared. We still have the rest of this week to work on the snow removal. And then into next week, we will be much more prepared moving forward.
Okay. So if there's any large potholes within the town's Stony Plain that on the roads that we control, they can just call it in and you guys will do a spot fix?
That is correct, Your worship.
Okay, thank you. So I'll direct them to the Public Works line. Okay, with that, thank you very much, administration, for your work and the presentation coming forward. Council, thank you for reading and your conversation. Again, there's always better decisions to be had when we put our brains together, because we all come from different perspectives. And I've always said many times, we're passionate about the community and building it better. So what we do here, we do with passion, and sometimes we rub each other the wrong way, but never take that personally, because we're here for the same reason, and that's to build a better community. Okay, guys, that's adjourned. There's actually no bottom on this field?